Find a comfortable position, let your body relax, take one slow breath in and let it go. There is nowhere you need to be right now. Nothing to do, just rest and let the story carry you gently away. Right now, every headline about China and America is being written as if it's something new. It isn't. 2,000 years ago, the Han Dynasty faced the exact same problem. A rival empire on its border, a trade war over luxury goods, and a government trying to decide, build walls or build bridges. They chose both, and the choice they made is still running your world right now. You use paper. Han China invented it. You live inside a bureaucratic state, civil servants, examinations, meritocracy, the idea that anyone can rise if they're smart enough. Han China invented that too. The road that connected Asia to Rome, carrying silk and spices and ideas and diseases, the first globalization, started in a valley in the Wei River basin, on a morning that looked exactly like this one. Close your eyes. You are standing at the edge of Chang'an, the capital of the Han Dynasty, and at its peak, one of the largest cities on Earth. More than 500,000 people live here. The streets are wide enough for 6 carts to pass side by side. The smell of charcoal smoke and fermented grain and something faintly sweet, osmanthus flowers, blooming in the courtyard of a house you cannot yet see. It is the year 100 BCE. Emperor Wu has been on the throne for 40 years. His empire stretches from the Pacific coast to the edge of Central Asia, further than any Chinese ruler has ever reached. And somewhere tonight, at the far end of the Silk Road, a Roman merchant is wearing a robe of Chinese silk. He has no idea where it came from. He just knows it's the most beautiful thing he has ever touched. Tonight, you are going to find out how it got there. Take a slow breath in. Let it out. The city is waking up around you. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance. A cartwheel turns on packed earth. The first light, pale gold, almost white, is beginning to appear at the edge of the sky. You have arrived in the most powerful empire on earth. Welcome to ancient China. Chang'an does not wake the way modern cities wake. There is no alarm, no notification, no sudden flood of artificial light. The city wakes in layers. The roosters first, then the soldiers on the city wall making their morning count, then the street vendors who have been awake since before dawn, carrying baskets of steamed buns and dried plums and river fish wrapped in lotus leaf. You are standing near the East Market, one of 2 government-controlled markets in Chang'an. This matters. In Han China, the government decides where you can sell things, what you can charge, and who is allowed to become wealthy. Merchants, no matter how rich, are ranked at the bottom of the social hierarchy, below farmers, below craftsmen, far below scholars. This is the first Han invention you need to understand. The 4-tiered social structure, scholars at the top, then farmers, then craftsmen, then merchants, was not accidental, it was policy. The Han emperors understood something that took Western economies another 15 centuries to figure out. Unchecked merchant wealth destabilizes governments. So they controlled it, taxed it, and made sure that the smartest people in the empire competed to become civil servants, not businessmen. The exam that decided who got to be a civil servant, the Imperial Examination, would eventually become the model for every modern civil service system on Earth. Britain copied it in the 1800s. The United States adopted versions of it. The idea that you should test people on merit rather than birth, that came from here. It is 5 a.m. The city gates are opening. Outside, farmers are bringing in the day's produce: millet, sorghum, winter melon, leafy greens still damp with dew. A boy no older than 12 carries a pole across his shoulders with two enormous baskets hanging from either end. He walks without spilling a drop. He has been doing this since he could walk. A scholar in a gray robe passes him on the road, reading from a wooden scroll as he walks. He does not look up. The boy watches him go. He is studying for the examination. The market opens at sunrise and closes at sunset. These are not suggestions. They are laws. Inside the East Market, the layout is precise. Each category of goods has its own section, its own row of stalls. Silk is here, bronze implements over there. Lacquerware, bowls and boxes finished in layers of red and black lacquer, so fine they look like they are made of glass, in the third row from the entrance. A Han Dynasty lacquer bowl found in a tomb in Korea, 2,000 years old, is still intact today. Archaeologists opened the tomb expecting decay. They found the bowl looking as though it had been finished yesterday. 183 layers of lacquer, each one applied by hand, each one dried before the next was added. The craftsman who made it never became famous. He never left his name. But his work outlasted every emperor. This is what the Han understood about quality. It was not about the maker. It was about the thing itself. You stop at a stall selling inkstones, flat slabs of dark gray stone used for grinding ink. The vendor is a woman in her 50s. Her hands are stained permanently black. She demonstrates without being asked a small amount of water, the ink stick rotated against the stone in slow circles, the liquid darkening as you watch, the smell sharp and mineral and oddly comforting. This ink will be used to write on paper. Paper, actual paper, made from hemp fibers and bark, has existed in China for about a century at this point. It is still relatively new. Most official documents are still written on wood or bamboo strips. But paper is spreading. Lighter, cheaper, easier. Within 3 centuries, it will replace everything else. Within 14 centuries, it will reach Europe. Within 20, it will become your phone screen. The woman looks up at you, curious but not unfriendly. You buy an inkstone. You don't know why. The Silk Road begins on a map as a single line, from Chang'an westward, through the Hexi corridor into the deserts of Central Asia, onward through Persia to the Mediterranean coast. On the ground, it is nothing like a single line. It is a web. 1,000 local routes, seasonal paths, desert tracks known only to specific tribal guides. It is dangerous in ways that modern roads are not. The Taklamakan Desert, whose name, depending on who you ask, means you go in, you don't come out, sits in the middle of the route like a locked door. The only way through is to hug the edges, town by town, oasis by oasis. But goods moved. Silk moved west. Glass moved east. Horses, the famous Fergana horses, which Han Emperor Wu wanted desperately, moved both ways. Why horses? Because Han China had a problem. To the north, the Xiongnu, a confederation of nomadic tribes, had been raiding Chinese settlements for generations. The Great Wall existed precisely because of them. But walls only go so far. Emperor Wu decided he needed a cavalry army, and Chinese horses, bred for farming, were too small and too slow. The Fergana horses, from what is now Uzbekistan, were different. Taller, faster, strong enough to carry an armored soldier at full gallop. Han texts describe them as heavenly horses that sweated blood. They didn't actually sweat blood. Probably. Historians think it was a parasite that caused burst capillaries under the skin. But the horses were real, and Emperor Wu sent an army of 60,000 soldiers across the Taklamakan Desert to get them. He got the horses. He also opened the world. You are walking through the residential wards of Chang'an now. The city is divided into rectangular blocks. Each block is a ward. Each ward has walls. Each ward has a gate that closes at night. You cannot leave your ward after dark. This is not considered unusual. This is considered order. Inside the ward, the houses are arranged around interior courtyards. The wealthy have multiple courtyards, each one a room of sky, planted with bamboo or persimmon trees, with a well at the center. The less wealthy have smaller courtyards. The poor share them with their neighbors and their neighbors' animals. The smell of breakfast is everywhere. Rice gruel, congee, simmering in clay pots, something pickled, smoke curling from every chimney hole. A Han Dynasty household was a unit of economic and moral responsibility. If one member committed a crime, the entire household could be punished. If a soldier deserted, his family suffered. This sounds harsh. It was also, in its way, community. You were never alone. You were also never free of obligation. The family system, Confucian in structure, with clear hierarchies of parent over child, older over younger, ruler over subject, was the operating system beneath everything else. Laws were secondary. Relationships were primary. You obeyed not because of a written code, but because of who you were to the person above you in the chain. This is still true in most of East Asia today. If you have ever worked with a Chinese, Japanese, or Korean colleague and noticed the elaborate attention to hierarchy in relationship, the gifts, the deference, the way decisions move slowly until everyone is aligned, you are watching Han Dynasty software running on modern hardware. 2,000 years is a long time to debug a system. Apparently, it still works. The government quarter of Chang'an is quiet at this hour. Guards stand at intervals along the outer walls. Inside, in the Bureau of Archives, hundreds of bamboo strip documents are stacked floor to ceiling in wooden racks, organized by year, by province, by subject. Population counts, tax records, military dispatches. The output of a kingdom of 50 million people being managed in real time by an army of civil servants. There is something in the archive that is not a tax record. It has been there for 3 years. A sealed box brought from the western provinces, delivered with a letter in a script that no one in the bureau can fully read. It sat in a corner for a year before anyone noticed it. It sat for another year before someone thought to mention it to the Bureau of Astronomy. The astronomer who opened the box has not spoken of what he found inside. He has, however, started working at night. His assistants say he no longer sleeps, that he has sent 3 letters west to contacts along the trade routes and received 1 letter back, that the letter arrived sealed with a wax the color of dried blood, and that when he read it, he sat very still for a very long time. No one knows what was in the box. Not yet. We will come back to it. The wealth of Han China was not primarily gold. It was silk. Raw silk, the continuous filament unwound from a single silkworm cocoon, is the strongest natural fiber ever discovered. Pound for pound, it is stronger than steel. It is naturally temperature regulating, cooling in summer and warming in winter. It is hypoallergenic. It drapes without wrinkling. It catches light in a way that no other fabric does, as if the light is moving through it rather than off of it. For 500 years, China had a monopoly on silk production. The secret was the silkworm, Bombyx mori, and its food source, the white mulberry tree. Both were native to China. Both were under penalty of death forbidden to leave. Exporting silkworm eggs or mulberry seeds was a capital crime. The penalty was not just execution, it was the execution of everyone associated with you. This was the first trade secret in history. It held for 5 centuries. Then, around 550 CE, 2 monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China inside hollow walking sticks. A story so perfectly cinematic that it has been doubted and confirmed and doubted again by historians, and the monopoly ended. But during the Han Dynasty, the monopoly was absolute. Rome paid for silk in gold. The drain of Roman gold eastward into China was so severe that Roman economists wrote about it as an existential threat. The writer Pliny the Elder estimated that China and India together were extracting 100 million sestertii per year from the Roman economy. 100 million per year. For silk, for robes. The first global trade war was about fabric. You're wearing a version of that silk right now. The astronomer's name is Zhou Tan. You see him late in the afternoon crossing the courtyard between the Bureau of Astronomy and the Imperial Library. He is a small man, perhaps 50, with the look of someone who has been thinking hard about something for a long time and has not quite reached the answer. He is carrying the box. This is unusual. The box belongs in the archive. That is the rule. You follow him at a distance through a narrow passage between 2 administrative buildings, out into a small garden that seems to exist between 2 official spaces, not quite belonging to either. There is a single stone bench. He sits down on it, places the box beside him, and looks up at the sky. It is still afternoon. The stars are not visible. He appears to be waiting for them anyway. What is in that box? You won't find out today. But tonight, as you fall asleep, the question will follow you through the corridors of Chang'an, through the silk markets and the archive rooms and the wide avenues where civil servants walk with their scrolls and their careful expressions. Something was found in the West. Something that changed the way a man sleeps. And whatever it has been sitting in that box for 3 years, in a sealed room, while the dynasty continues around it, vast and indifferent and entirely unaware. Sleep is coming, but not yet. The medical knowledge of Han China is not metaphor. It is engineering. The Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's classic of internal medicine, was compiled during this period. It contains the foundational theory of traditional Chinese medicine, the concept of qi, the flow of vital energy through pathways in the body, the system of meridians, the diagnostic logic of pulse reading, tongue inspection, the careful questioning of a patient's sleep, their appetite, their emotional state. Western medicine spent the next 2,000 years insisting this was superstition. Then acupuncture began producing results in controlled clinical trials. Then researchers found that the meridian pathways correspond to fascial planes, sheets of connective tissue that run through the body in exactly the routes ancient Chinese doctors described. They were not measuring the same thing Western medicine measured. They were measuring something real. The Han physician Chunyu Yi kept detailed case records, some of the earliest surviving medical histories in the world. He recorded the patient's name, their symptoms, his diagnosis, his treatment, the outcome. He was the first doctor in recorded history to keep systematic notes. This is not a small thing. Systematic medical record keeping is what allows medicine to learn from its failures rather than simply repeating them. In a small clinic near the southern gate of Chang'an, a physician is seeing his last patient of the day. The patient is a middle-aged man who has not slept well in months. His pulse, the physician says, is scattered. His qi is not flowing smoothly through the heart meridian. He prescribes three things: acupuncture at three specific points, a tea made from jujube and wheat and licorice root, and, this is the part the patient doesn't expect, he is told to stop worrying about whether he will sleep. The body knows how to sleep. The mind is the only obstacle. 2,000 years later, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia says the same thing. The tomb of Lady Di was sealed in 168 BCE. It was opened in 1972. Inside, archaeologists found a woman so well preserved that her skin was still soft to the touch. Her hair was intact. Her eyelashes, the joints of her fingers were still flexible. She had type A blood. Her last meal, still in her stomach, was melon seeds. She had died in summer, eating melon in the kingdom of Han. How do you preserve a body for 2,168 years? Lady Di's tomb was found at a depth of 12 meters, sealed with layers of white clay and charcoal that had created an airtight, acid-free, temperature-stable environment. The coffin had been encased inside 4 nested lacquered boxes. The innermost coffin was wrapped in 20 layers of silk. The entire burial chamber was then flooded, deliberately, with a reddish liquid whose exact composition is still not fully understood. The people who built the tomb knew exactly what they were doing. They had a theory of preservation sophisticated enough to work across 2 millennia. With her body, they buried silk robes, bronze mirrors, musical instruments, lacquer dishes still containing food, and a map. Painted on silk, the map shows rivers and mountains and road distances in a scale accurate enough that modern surveyors have used it to verify geographic features. A map accurate enough to use, made of silk, found in a tomb 2,000 years old. Also buried with Lady Di, a book of physical exercises, illustrated, showing 44 postures for promoting health and longevity. This is the earliest known manual of therapeutic exercise in the world. Every yoga, qigong, tai chi, and physical therapy practice that followed has ancestors here. She was a remarkable woman to bury with so many useful things. The Great Wall is not one wall. This matters because the Great Wall, as most people picture it, the sweeping stone battlements winding dramatically over mountain ridges outside Beijing, was built by the Ming Dynasty, 1400 years after the Han. The Han Wall was different, rammed earth and tamped gravel, lower, wider at the base, running through desert and grassland rather than mountain. Much of it has dissolved back into the landscape. It was also, by most military analyses, largely ineffective at stopping the Xiongnu. Walls slow things down. They do not stop determined cavalry. What the wall actually did, what Emperor Wu eventually understood, was serve as a logistics network. A long chain of watchtowers, spaced so that signal fires could relay messages across thousands of kilometers in a single day. The fastest communication system of the ancient world. Better than anything Rome had. Better than anything Persia had. The Han message system, beacons on towers with a code of fire signals for different kinds of alerts, was the first long-distance communication infrastructure in history. It was the telegraph. It was the internet. It was the idea that information could travel faster than a horse, faster than a man, faster than any physical thing. Tonight, a message is being sent. A fire on a watchtower somewhere in the Gobi Desert is being answered by a fire 60 kilometers away, then another, then another. By morning, the emperor in Chang'an will know what happened in the desert at dusk. The information takes all night. That is the miracle, not the limitation. The Silk Road carried more than silk. It carried Buddhism from India into China, a religion that would reshape East Asian civilization more profoundly than any political regime. It carried horses from Fergana, grapes from Persia, cotton from India. It carried glassware, which the Chinese found fascinating because Chinese craftsmen had not yet discovered how to make it. It also carried disease. The Antonine Plague that devastated Rome in 165 CE, killing as many as 5 million people, including 2 emperors, is now believed to have been smallpox or measles, traveling west along the Silk Road from Central Asia. The plague that weakened the Han Dynasty in the same period was likely the same pathogen moving east. The first pandemic was a side effect of the first globalization. This is not a metaphor. Along the route, in the desert oasis towns of Dunhuang and Turfan, merchants from a dozen cultures met and traded and ate together and slept under the same roofs. There were Greek-speaking merchants from Bactria, Sogdian traders from what is now Uzbekistan, the greatest merchant class in ancient history, who served as the primary intermediaries of the entire Silk Road for 5 centuries. There were Indian monks traveling with their texts, Zoroastrian priests from Persia, occasional Romans who had wandered further east than any Roman had any business being. They all had stories. In the caravanserai, the roadside inns where caravans stopped for the night, the stories were shared. Legends migrated, myths blended. The story of the Buddha passed through Zoroastrian filters and arrived in Rome as a Christian saint. The story you are hearing tonight traveled a similar road. In Chang'an, the examination season has begun. Candidates from every province of the empire have traveled to the capital, some for weeks, some for months. They have studied for years. The curriculum is the Confucian classics, the Analects, the Book of Documents, the Book of Rites, the Spring and Autumn Annals. You memorize them, you interpret them, you demonstrate that you understand not just what they say, but what they mean and what they require of you as a servant of the state. The examination is written, anonymous, graded by officials who do not know whose work they are reading. This was radical. In every other major civilization of this period, Rome, Persia, Egypt, high office was inherited or purchased. The Han examination was the first large-scale attempt to recruit talent on the basis of demonstrated ability rather than birth or wealth. It did not eliminate nepotism. Nothing eliminates nepotism, but it created a parallel track, a genuine path from poverty to power through knowledge. A boy born in a farming village in Shandong province could, if he was brilliant and disciplined and lucky and had a family willing to sacrifice their income to let him study rather than work, become a minister of the empire. Some did. The examination system would last in various forms for 2,000 years. It would be abolished in China in 1905. Within decades, every major nation on Earth had adopted a version of it. You probably passed a version of it to get your job. There is a story told about the alchemists of Han China. Emperor Wu, like every emperor before and after him, wanted to live forever. This is not unusual. What is unusual is the scale and seriousness with which he pursued it. He funded laboratories. He sent expeditions to find the islands of the immortals, said to lie in the Eastern Sea. He received reports from alchemists across the empire, some genuine, some fraudulent, most somewhere in between, about substances that might extend life, transmute metals, or connect the mortal world to the immortal one. The substance they kept returning to was a mixture of sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. When combined in the right proportions and subjected to heat, the mixture did not grant immortality. It exploded. The alchemists sensibly wrote down that you should not try this combination again. Their warning is the earliest known written reference to gunpowder. appearing in a Taoist text from the Han period as a caution rather than a recipe. The technology would not be weaponized for another 4 centuries. When it was, it would end feudalism, destroy castle walls, make cavalry obsolete, and enable European colonization of the world. All of this because someone in Han China was trying to live forever. The universe has a sense of irony. In the 44th year of Emperor Wu's reign, the empire fractured, not from outside, from inside. The problem was succession. Emperor Wu had outlived most of his sons. The surviving heir was young, 8 years old when Wu died in 87 BCE. The boy was placed on the throne, and real power passed to regents. The regents were not the emperor. They had the power but not the legitimacy. They made decisions the court resented. The court made counter moves. The Han machine, the extraordinary, efficient, exam-tested civil service, began to work against itself. This is the vulnerability the system had never solved. Who watches the watchers? The Han answer was supposed to be the emperor. The emperor was supposed to be the still point around which everything else turned, the son of heaven, the link between the human world and the cosmic order. When the emperor was strong, the system worked. When the emperor was weak, or young, or absent, the system still ran, but it ran for whoever was sitting closest to the throne. For 100 years after Emperor Wu, the Han Dynasty continued. It produced poets and astronomers and engineers. It built canals. It extended the Silk Road. It survived famines and floods and palace coups. And then in 9 CE, a minister named Wang Mang declared himself emperor. He was the first usurper in Chinese history to justify his claim not through force but through Confucian argument. He said the Han had lost the mandate of heaven, the cosmic sanction that justified a ruler's right to rule. He said he had received it instead. The argument was taken seriously. This too is a Han invention, the idea that power requires justification, that rulers can be wrong, that heaven itself might disagree. The canal system of Han China is not well remembered in the West. It should be. The Han government built and maintained thousands of kilometers of canals connecting the Yellow River, the Wei River, and the Yangtze Basin, an irrigation and transport network that turned northern China into one of the most productive agricultural regions on Earth. The system fed 50 million people on land that would otherwise have been inadequate. The engineering required to build these canals, understanding water flow, gradient, lock systems, flood management, was centuries ahead of anything being done in the West. The Grand Canal, which was later expanded and which still exists, is the longest artificial waterway in the world. It is older than the English language. The Han also invented the chain pump, a continuous belt of paddles for moving water uphill, and the multiple tube seed drill, which planted crops in rows at uniform depth and spacing. These inventions reached Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, where they helped trigger the agricultural revolution. The agricultural revolution fed the industrial revolution. The industrial revolution made the modern world. The chain pump was invented here, in a field somewhere in the Wei River Valley, by a farmer whose name was not recorded, trying to move water from a river to a dry patch of land. The sound of it, the rhythmic creak and splash, is one of the oldest sounds of human ingenuity. You can hear it now if you are quiet enough. The physician is still in his clinic. His last patient has gone. The room is quiet. A single oil lamp burns on the table. He is making notes on a bamboo strip, recording the case, the symptoms, the prescription, the expected outcome. He does not know if the man will sleep better. He will find out in a week when the patient returns. He records everything because he has learned over 30 years of practice that what he thinks he knows and what is actually true are frequently different things. The only cure for this is to write things down and then check whether you were right. This is the scientific method. It will not be named as such for another 16 centuries. But it is being practiced here, in a small room in Chang'an, by a man with ink-stained fingers who is simply trying to help people sleep. Outside, the city is quieting. The market gates have closed. The residential wards have locked for the night. In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor, old now, ill, his extraordinary ambitions both achieved and diminished by time, is being attended by servants who move silently through his chambers. He has conquered much. He has lost much. He is, at the end, a man trying to sleep, like the rest of us. The box. Tan, the astronomer, opens it after dark. You are close enough now to see. Inside is a bronze instrument, circular, the size of a large plate, with a needle at its center that moves on its own, pointing always in the same direction. No one along the trade route who passed it along could explain it. It was made somewhere further west by people who understood something about the Earth that Han astronomers had not yet articulated. It is a compass, but not quite. The needle points south, not north, which is how Chinese instruments were oriented. And the outer ring is marked not with cardinal directions, but with constellations, a star map, circular, designed to be overlaid on the landscape. To find your position not by the sun, but by the angle of stars to the horizon. Tan has spent 3 years trying to understand it. He now believes, cautiously, carefully, that the Earth is round, not flat, not a dish floating on water. Round like the sphere he has been watching overhead all his life. He has sent letters west to find out who made it and where they got the idea. The letter he received back, sealed in dark wax, said, "Someone sent one east as well." 2 instruments, made somewhere in the middle, sent in both directions along a road that connects 2 empires that have never met, each one carrying the same knowledge. The Earth is a sphere. You can navigate it. The sky is a map. In Rome, a man is looking at his compass pointing south. In Chang'an, a man is looking at his compass also pointing south. They are on the same planet. They do not know each other's names. The Silk Road did not decline because people stopped wanting silk. It declined because the sea route became faster and cheaper. When Portuguese sailors rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488 and opened direct sea routes to Asia, the overland Silk Road began to empty. The caravanserais of Central Asia, those extraordinary crossroads of cultures and languages and stories, slowly fell quiet. The Sogdian merchants, who had maintained the route for centuries, dispersed. Languages died, trade routes became archaeological sites. The knowledge that traveled those roads, however, survived. Paper arrived in Europe via the Islamic world in the 10th and 11th centuries, about 900 years after it was invented in China. The printing press, which Gutenberg is credited with inventing in 1440, was preceded by Chinese block printing by 500 years and by Chinese movable type by 400. The mechanical clock, the iron plow, the fishing reel, the suspension bridge, the parachute, the list of technologies that traveled from China to Europe, often centuries after their invention, is long enough to be uncomfortable. The question historians argue about is, why didn't China industrialize first? They had the technology, they had the capital, they had the administrative infrastructure, they had 50 million people and 2,000 years of continuous civilization. There are many answers. None is entirely satisfying. What is clear is that the world you live in was substantially built from blueprints drawn here, in this valley, in this dynasty, on paper that was invented here, with ink ground on stones like the one you bought this morning. Your world began in Han, China. It traveled west, and it came back changed. The city is quieter now. The last of the evening vendors have packed their stalls. The ward gates are locked. In the residential quarters, families have finished their evening meal. Rice or millet, fermented vegetables, a little braised pork if it was a good week, congee if it wasn't. Children have been put to bed on their wooden platforms, under padded quilts, with the sound of their parents talking softly in the outer room. The sound of a family in the dark is the same in every century. Someone is coughing. Someone is telling a story about what happened in the market today. Someone is asking a question and receiving an answer. Somewhere a baby is making that small rhythmic sound that means it is falling asleep. Not quite there yet, not quite awake, in the space between that all living things inhabit when the day releases them. You are in that space now. The lamp in Jotan's window is still lit. He is still watching the sky. The compass needle points south. The stars move in their slow circles. The empire sleeps around him, 50 million people in their beds, none of them knowing that an astronomer is sitting in a garden with a bronze instrument, slowly figuring out the shape of the world. By morning, he will have written 2 pages of notes. By the time those notes are read by someone who can use them, a navigator, an explorer, a cartographer, 800 years will have passed. Some ideas travel faster than others. In the tombs of Han nobles, archaeologists have found things that should not be there. Wine sealed in bronze vessels, still liquid after 2,000 years. Silk so fine it could be folded small enough to pass through a ring. Chessboards, a complete orchestra of musical instruments, including a lacquered zither with 25 strings, still tunable when found. Medical texts written on silk that describe surgical procedures not rediscovered in the West until the 19th century. The most remarkable tomb is perhaps the one at Mawangdui, where Lady Di was found. Among the objects buried with her was a text called the Wu Xingzhan, the 5 planets. It is an astronomical almanac recording the movements of Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, and Mercury over a period of 70 years. Its calculations are accurate to within 1 degree. 1 degree over 70 years, using only the naked eye and systematic record keeping. No telescope, no computer, no radio telescope listening to the edge of the universe. Just a person, sitting in the dark, watching the sky, writing things down. There is a version of you in that record. Every astronomical measurement ever made is connected to every other one, each generation inheriting the careful observations of the last, building a picture of the universe that no single life could complete. The astronomer who first calculated the orbit of Jupiter did not live to see his data used. He just wrote it down and hoped someone would. Someone did. The silk you are thinking of is not the bolt of fabric in the market. It is the silk thread that connects you to this place. Your language has borrowed from this dynasty. Words like tea, which came from the southern Chinese dialect word cha, carried along the trade routes into Arabic and Persian, and eventually English. The paper you write on, the printing that made your books, the examination systems that sorted your education, the bureaucratic state that maintains your roads and collects your taxes and occasionally infuriates you. These are Han inventions. The noodle, which moved west along the Silk Road and became pasta in Italy, is a Han Dynasty food. Marco Polo is often credited with bringing pasta from China, which is historically dubious, but the noodle is Chinese regardless. The wheelbarrow, which seems so simple, so obvious, such an inevitable invention, did not appear in Europe until the Middle Ages. In China, it was in use by the 1st century CE. The kite, the matches, the cast iron pan, the toothbrush. Tonight you are sleeping in a world built from Han blueprints. This is not metaphor or exaggeration. It is archaeology and trade history, and the slow accumulation of things that worked, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, across mountains and deserts and centuries of sea. You inherited it. Rest now. The lamps are going out across Chang'an. One by one, ward by ward, the oil burns low and the light fades, and the darkness of the ancient city fills in around the shapes of buildings and trees, and the long roads leading out through the gates into the countryside and the desert and the long west. The stars are very bright here. There is no other light to diminish them. You can see the Milky Way, a river of cold light across the sky, the way it looked before electricity, before industry, before the slow brightening of the modern world obscured it. The ancients knew this river. They had names for it in every language. In Chinese, it is the Silver River, Yinhe, and it is crossed once a year by 2 stars called the Weaver Girl and the Cowherd, who are lovers separated by the gods, allowed to meet only on the 7th night of the 7th month, when magpies form a bridge across the sky. This story is 2,000 years old. It is still told. The stars are the same ones, the same cold light, reaching the same eyes, across the same silence. You are lying down now. The ground is solid beneath you. The air is cool and smells of river water and night-blooming flowers, and the faint smoke of a city settling into sleep. There's nothing you need to do. Breathe slowly. The Han Dynasty will last another 200 years before it finally fractures. Not in a single dramatic collapse, but in a long, slow unraveling of the thing that held it together. The belief that the emperor held the mandate of heaven, that the system was just, that talent and study led to power, and power led to order. It was not entirely untrue. It was not entirely true either. What survived was not the empire. Empires always end. What survived was the examination system, and the civil service, and the philosophy of governance, and the agricultural technology, and the medical practice, and the paper making, and the printing, and the astronomy. What survived was the knowledge. Every civilization is a relay race. The baton is knowledge. Everything a society has learned about how to live, how to govern, how to eat, how to heal, how to understand the sky. You receive it. You add to it if you can. You pass it on. Jotan passed his notes about the compass to a student. The student passed them on. Someone eventually built a better instrument. Someone eventually understood the earth was round. Someone eventually used that knowledge to find their way across an ocean. The relay is still running. You are in it. The city is asleep. All of it. The scholars and the merchants and the farmers and the civil servants and the physicians and the astronomers and the silk weavers and the children who studied by lamplight and the children who carried baskets on poles and the emperor in his palace who wanted to live forever and the woman in her lacquered coffin waiting 2,000 years to be found. All of them asleep. And you are among them now, in the dark, in the quiet, on the other side of all that history, held gently by the same night that held them, under the same stars. The silver river crosses the sky, the compass needle finds its south, the silk thread stretches, thin and strong, from here to wherever you are. There is nothing left to think about, nothing to solve. nothing to carry, only the dark and the quiet breathing of a city that built the world